Just put in your email, you get on it. It's a great resource to come in, talk about debugging some of your problems, ask questions about learning to code, ask questions about your work, your career, all that kind of stuff. We have a very active community. We help each other out in answering these kind of challenges and questions that we all face, whether it's around career or it's around certain frameworks, certain tools you're building, and there's even a dedicated debugging channel that people just go in and start pasting code and talking about their problems on daily basis. So if you want to talk to fellow practitioners in the industry, or if you want to share some of the lessons you're learning in a collaborative kind of social sense, come and join us at TechMasters. Again, the website is techmasters.chat. Just get on there, talk to the community. Thank you.
All right, can I please call up our panelists, Helen, Darcy, Erica, Quincy, and I'll be moderating. And can you please sit in front of your faces? Maybe that'll make it easier for people over social. Please sit in front of your face. Awesome, cool, great. Great. So we've already introduced Quincy, Erica. I've got a couple other introductions to make for Darcy and Helen, just to tell a little bit about what they do. So just give me one sec while I pull it up. So Darcy is a developer, designer, founder, mentor, speaker, and UX advocate who's created an award-winning digital experiences with a holistic approach to problem solving for more than 15 years. A mouthful in brackets. He speaks at and organizes conferences, events all over the world, promoting web standards, best practices, and the future of technology. Darcy is passionate about open source and engages with the community through ongoing thought leadership, outreach, and philanthropy. He is invested and continues to help mentor startups, founders, and new developers. So welcome, Darcy.
Hey.
And Helen, I had to shorten your bio because it's like, Helen's got one hell of a resume. So Helen co-founded the University of Toronto's Computer Science Innovation Lab, DSIL, in 2015, an incubator and accelerator for early stage startups in Canada. She's a lecturer at the University of Toronto in the Department of Computer Science St. George campus and Department of Computer and Mathematical Sciences at Scarborough campus, where she teaches product development, UX design, lean startup methodologies, rapid prototyping, entrepreneurship, innovation, and growth strategy. Helen is also on the product development team of NERD, Neurotech Early Research and Development at the Ontario Brains Institute, where she works with nerd startups to create strategy to commercialize their applied research. So thank you very much for being here today, Helen, and welcome.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we'll kick things off. So this panel is about Hindsight is 2020, which is kind of going back and getting people's advice and experience on what their experiences were like and what they would change going back if they were their former selves. So I'm going to kick it off with this question. If you were to start all over again now, what 3 technologies would you aim to master? So do you want to kick things off, Quincy?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay. I would probably just stick with the sort of technologies you can use on CodePen and JSPen, because you can just really rapidly prototype things. So that's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can just build amazingly powerful and fast static sites. FreeCodeCamp Guide is actually a static website. It's served off Netlify. So you can do an amazing amount with just those basic tools.
Thanks.
If it's yellow, it's on you.
If it's, there we go. Okay. What 3 technologies would I learn differently?
Would you aim to master?
Would I aim to master? I mean, I'd still go JavaScript because the web, that's really all. Swift? I'd go Swift. I don't know Swift. I've been trying to learn Swift. I should learn that sooner. And maybe Objective-C to give like a base to the Swift. Yeah, JavaScript all the way.
JavaScript, yeah. I think I've been preaching JavaScript for like 16 years now. Yeah. So number 1, JavaScript for sure, for all the reasons Quincy said. Obviously, super easy to get going. Python probably because if you want to do some AI in the future, TensorFlow, I think, is written in Python. And then probably something super fast, like Go or Rust would be the last one. And those would probably future-proof you for a while. So.
Yeah, like Node, that'd be good. So yeah, I continuously do rapid prototyping. Like it's HTML, CSS, and as I call it, Jabba the script, you know. But now maybe I wish I had gone earlier. Learning those three really propelled my career forward from the time I came in 2010 back to Toronto when I was living in Holland. And then I was seeing Darcy at FITC talk about it and saying, okay, that's what I got to do. I'm a very front end kind of person. Like I've got to, you know, as a developer, I need to continuously work in that framework of quick. And that's what I teach continuously. But Python now, R, and working into any machine learning, open source, anything that I could work on now, working with all the massive data. I wish I had started like a year, 2 years ago, because now I'm suffering, right? You know, not suffering, I just don't have time. I think this is the thing, you know, we're always waiting to be able to build, and we're like, oh, I wish I had an extra 10 hours, you know? I'm like, I don't know where we're gonna find another 5-10 hours to say, oh, that'd be cool to kind of learn more. Finding that time, that's the only reason we wanna start earlier in our careers, because then by the time you get to where you want to be, or where you think you're eventually going to get to, is you can at least start developing your career forward where the direction you want to go. So start early. But yeah, I think Python.
Yeah. I think you're way farther ahead than a lot of people, though. It's like I'm not doing like any machine learning like at all. So yeah, those were definitely things that I guess we would all invest in. So.
Great. So next, what are some tools outside of code that every developer should pick up?
Tough. Outside of code? Mm-hmm. I went to a performing arts high school very young, and I got some like dramatic skills out of the way, like learned my art history, color theory. That was like really good. And actually, in Ontario, my high school was one of the first to offer like 3 different types of diplomas. So an art diploma, a business diploma, and then the general Ontario high school diploma. So I actually picked up some like marketing skills, entrepreneur like sort of skills, wrote a business plan, my 100-page business plan when I was 16. So those kind of like soft skills that actually you probably take for granted on a day-to-day basis, that just help you communicate better, especially once you get into the workforce or you already are in the workforce. You don't realize how valuable that can be. Developers are often sort of stereotyped into the fact that they can't communicate with each other, or they're sort of sitting in the dungeons, you know, coding away and don't communicate. But probably one of the biggest aspects that you learn as you progress through your career is that communication is like 190% of what we do. Documentation, like this is all how you become better at your job, is being able to communicate. So yeah, definitely like skills like, you know, learning how to market yourself. If you're going to be a freelance developer, it's huge. And branding is like one of the biggest things that I think I've done okay at in my career, and somehow it's just happened naturally. But if you can go out and take a class for it, or, you know.
Improv. Presentation skills, I think, are number one. You know, I think I work day in, day out with computer science students, so they're 4th-year graduate and PhD students. And you know when they're extroverted is when they look at your shoes. Did anyone get that? It's like, this is the way they talk to you, and then if they talk to you that, they're extroverted, right? Like it's quite bad. I've had people do demos and they're eating apples while they're doing it, right? And I have people in industry in it.
Is the demo on how to eat an apple?
No, the demo's just kind of sitting there going, yeah, like, this is what we built. This is like, you're a sales engine. You've got to want to own your work, and you have to learn how to sell it. So is that improvisation? Is it sales? Is it, you have to own what you do and then have a conversation with the client. Because I think, we'd say the majority, because sorry, I wasn't here, are the majority of freelancers in the room? Is that where we're going, or we're on Teams? Don't be shy, hands in the air, wave them like you don't care. There you go. Get started, it doesn't matter if you're an intra-entrepreneur inside a company and you need to speak up and talk about your work. Get used to talking about it and making the case. So a critical thinking is really important. So presentations, 1, programming, and then 3 is literally like being able to critically think through what you're doing, why you're doing it, so justification, and that is those are soft skills. The other one is finance. Always justify why the cost happened, because people just shoot you down and say no, yes, and that's where negotiation skills. So did I say 4? 4 is negotiation skills. Got to negotiate and say, no, my value is here, but also just overall a project has to move forward, so you got to justify, and sometimes that's where improv comes.
Okay, is this working? Can I just second all of that? You guys are great. I agree with all of that. Don't undervalue your soft skills, for sure.
I would also like to second that. I'd say one of the most underrated and most critically important skills is being able to communicate effectively through text. Most teams that are remote, a majority of their communication is written. It's Slack messages, it's emails, it's text messages back and forth, it's putting out tweets, things like that. So the way that you're perceived in text, without the context of the 90% of the communication that comes from being in the same room with you, you really have to work at it and make sure that the way you're communicating things is as clear as possible, and there's just so much potential for people to read it the wrong way. So it's really an art that I think you'll master over time, but I believe that most communication in the future will just be short bursts of written information. So might as well start getting good at it now.
There's one thing I'd like to add too. Outside of what I do for my job, I run a weekly newsletter for people seeking entry-level, non-technical jobs in Toronto. And one of the things that I find that people struggle with the most is just not being confined to just applying for existing jobs. A lot of the jobs out there are not posted yet, or the employer doesn't even realize that it's about to be a job, or things like that. So if there are companies that you idolize or you like, or people that work at certain companies that you like, one of my biggest suggestions to people that are looking for jobs always is just make a list of 10 or 15 different companies that you'd love to work at. Find someone interesting at that company that you can find on LinkedIn, and then you can use like tools like hunter.io and things like that to kind of like fish out their email and then email them directly. And like, yeah,
I was just saying, like, you know how we were talking about having communication skills is the small talk. And it's so scary, especially when it's good you're here, you're starting to talk to each other, but when you're going to, well, I think the majority of people you're going to start meeting in this field and starting to meet, say, the industries you're interested in, you got to get used to being able to have these little short bursts of communication. And I think when I first, you don't have time to like go, let me tell you my life history of what's going on. And you want to tell them all the cool stuff you know and what you do, but you only have like 2-3 seconds. So that elevator pitch of yourself, if you can get down 3 or 4 lines and just be like, this is what I do, this is what I love, how can I, like, what do you do? Like, go right on to finding out who they are, because you never know who they might be, and be like, wow, okay, cool, this is what I do. What else do you, like, you know what I mean? And you got to get that back and forth kind of tennis conversation. And I know conferences and events are really hard. They're very intimidating. And when you're new to a country, or you're just overall just new and you don't know anyone, just, I don't know, find the person with the pink hair, I always had pink hair, so people always came up to me for some reason, but I don't have pink anywhere. I'd always find the person with the multicolored hair. I don't know, it was the type of events I would go to, so maybe that was it. It's always so UX. You know the person's in UX when they have either red-rimmed glasses or it's like, half the hair is shaved, and I don't know, it's kind of, it's very, and going to excellent conferences and going and talking to people who are in your industry. But saying that, sorry, I don't want to preach, because I had to go into so much pain in the first years of finding out what I'm supposed to do in my life. I still don't know, is going to industries you want to be part of. So it's great that we hang out together like this and we could talk to each other about what we're doing. But if you want to work in a certain industry, I don't want you to see you at Hacker Nest. Look, I love the guys at Hacker Nest. I could keep on drinking there all the time. But, but I don't want to see you continuously at startup events. If you're industry and you're trying to sell and you're an expert in, say, a certain industry, you should be hanging out with industry leaders that you're trying to go after, right? So say it's mobility, maybe it's TELUS, it's Rogers. You should hang out at those types of events. You need to go in front of the people who are in the industry. If you hang out too much with us, you're just hanging out with us. I'm not going to hire you right now. But what you should be doing, I'll help you and consult and support you and advise you and mentor you. But you should be hanging out also at conferences that are for your industry. That's really important. So that communication skill, I wish I hung out more at industries I wanted to be at. It took me a year to learn that. So I'm telling you this now. Just hindsight 2020.
All right, that's actually a good segue into the next question. What is one mistake you've made in your career that you remember the most, and how did you recover from it? Some awkward laughs here.
I have too many. There's really too many. I have deleted a database, production database. How do I? Yeah. Whoa, hey, come on. I thought we were in a safe space here. Ouch. A lot of wagging fingers. Wait till it happens to you. You'll be coming to me and say, how did you recover? So yeah, I guess I can talk about that. I was working with a small agency, which I was the first employee of, Jack Cooper, that got acquired and is now Shopify. And we were working on, essentially we were doing a lot of work with startups at the time. And actually, it was kind of a success story because we had just finished building an MVP for this startup, and in like 6 weeks, we had built a whole CMS. I had built an API. I had built it was crazy. This is probably like 7-8 years ago, using like CodeIgniter, PHP, talking about the old Web.2 or 2.0 tech stack. And of course, back then, Git wasn't really around. There was Subversion and stuff, but we were doing a lot of FTPing still and uploading files manually. And I was the lead developer. There was one other developer on the team. And so we went to production and we started, had a big launch, and we're starting to get emails and real users into the database. And one bad SQL query later, and no more information, and you have to tell the client essentially what you've done. First, you have to tell your peers. Meanwhile, you're so exhausted. I was working day and night for 6 weeks, so there was a little bit of give there, obviously, based on the amount of work that had been put into it, and the end result, which was really good. At that time, I wasn't sophisticated enough to go try to look into memory and see if we could, recover the database. So we just spun up a new one, and it was all about using my beautiful communication skills to sell how we could turn this into, put some spin on the marketing for how I just deleted all the users in the database. Still making.
Feature, not a bug.
Sorry?
It's a feature, not a bug.
It's a feature. If I was at Apple, that'd be great. We've totally made performance improvements now. So yeah, that was one of the biggest mistakes. I think I've made a ton more mistakes, I'm sure. I trip over my feet every day. So.
No, it could go that way.
Oh, okay.
I've got one if you want.
So one of the biggest mistakes I made was trying, this is related to building things, just trying to do too much and not listening to what people really wanted, trying to understand what their underlying problem is, whoever the client is, whoever the hypothetical user is. You want to make sure that you understand what problem you're trying to solve with code. And I love this quote, if you understand all that, you can completely avoid, I kind of butchered the quote already. So the quote is, weeks of programming can save you hours of planning. And I spent like 18 months building something that nobody wanted because I didn't listen to people when they were trying to tell me, oh, this is cool, but can it do this? And then I understood, people just want to do this. They don't want to do this, this, and this. And so just listening to people and incorporating that feedback quickly, pretty much everything that you learn from reading like the Lean Startup or any of these agile methodologies, I think is pretty well intentioned, and a lot of that stuff can really help save you a ton of time. So
I have a new one.
Cool.
So I'm still pretty new in my career. So any mistakes that I've made have been recently. I haven't gotten over them yet.
They don't know it's happened yet.
There is a mistake. It's pretty bad. I made it about 3 months ago. I didn't learn about it until a week ago. So I am still in the process of like shame and heartbreak, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get over this. But thankfully, I have a really good manager who's helping me through it. So I can tell you about it. The thing I mentioned in my talk before, Tab Center that I was working on when I was an intern, take the tabs from the top, move it to the left. Before this new release, we needed to test Tab Center and figure out, hey, do users like this? We need to test this on them. So we built a whole another branch in GitHub and put analytics in it, and we were going to send it out with this tool to 1% of our users. So a couple months ago, we packaged this up, we send it out. I'm thinking, cool, my project is in testing. That's really exciting. 1% of our users is seeing this thing right now, and we're going to get feedback, and we're going to see what everything that they're doing with this tool. About a week ago, one of the data engineers comes to me and says, hey, why don't I see any data from Tab Center? Where did you put it? And I'm like, yeah, it should be right here. It's right here, isn't it? He's like, no, we're not getting any pings. We're not getting any analytics whatsoever. So I look at the code, and I had sent him the master branch instead of sending him the analytics branch. So that was a good 6 weeks of testing destroyed, and we can't test it again because it's a particular type of add-on that isn't allowed in this new release. So that is out the window and destroyed. Thankfully, like I said, I have a good manager who's helping me work through it, and I believe in the future we're actually going to rebuild it and package it out again in a separate way. But still, heartbreak and shame. We'll get there.
Blake's the best, yeah. I've got a Whimsy corn on my laptop, yeah. No mistakes?
I'm good. I'm perfect on this one. Yeah, no. There's been nothing. I've done nothing.
I love how Darcy just shoved the mic in your face.
I don't know what to try.
Be quiet.
No, I'm not joking. No, gosh. I think daily, I think daily I'm like either messing up somehow. But I just ignore it. I've turned into Trump. This isn't getting recorded. I told you, daily, I've learned not to swear as much, especially now that I'm getting recorded more and more. That's a good thing. I don't go into, I think the thing is it's presentation, back to presentation. Like we have a lot of teams working on a lot of things, making sure all stakeholders, prepping stakeholders before projects. Just don't put them in front of people who are not prepared. That's very, like putting them in front of a bunch of PhDs before even prepping the PhDs of what the meeting is for, seeing things mess up, not prepping, it's pretty much building good teams at this moment. I think I'm at that level. I've done so much bad stuff at a programming level, and I've done so much really just horrible things. But I think now, as director, I have to now make sure I'm moving relationships forward and projects forward. And if I mess up that, then I mess up relationships, like mess up those interactions of build, and people don't talk to each other, or an industry goes, that was unprofessional, or like we lose a client, like, or in this case, it's not a client, but these are large industries that come to us that work with our teams. So I feel like I'm always like massaging egos and supporting people and making sure everything's flowing and everything's okay. And, you know, so I feel like I've become more of a diplomat. I think Trump's a great diplomat. So
As she smiles into the camera.
you know, I'm going into politics. So yeah, see, another mistake. I do tons of them. Eventually, you don't even notice them anymore because there's so many.
All right. Can I just point out that one of the questions on here is how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Who wrote these questions? Alex, I'm looking at you.
Intested.
It's the man behind the pillar in blue.
All right. So here's the next one. What is your favorite way of staying up to date in the industry?
Running a Medium publication.
How do you find that helps for you?
So I probably read like hundreds of articles a week on Medium, just trying to curate. We get a lot of submissions, and that way I get exposed to a broad range of things. I have a friend, Jeff, who runs Software Engineering Daily, and he says running a podcast is the best way because every time he has a guest come on, he gets to spend like an hour or two going through and watching all their recorded talks and reading all their articles, and then like learning about the specific field that they've specialized in to the point that he can ask intelligent questions. So if you're interested in really staying up on a subject, creating a blog or creating a podcast would be two excellent ways to do that.
I listen to a lot of podcasts, not so much creating, but I have an hour commute to and from work roughly, and it's a great time to listen to podcasts.
I guess I put in a lot of, or I used to put in a lot of talk like descriptions. Like I used to like go out and find conferences that I want to speak at, and then I would just put out a subject that I want to talk about or learn about, and I put out essentially like a feeler or whatever to that conference or that meetup. And then it would get accepted, and I wouldn't know anything about the subject, and I would learn about it like the day before. So I stay up to date usually by coming to places like this, meetups or conferences, and speaking at them. And but more realistically, it is sort of a grind. I find myself every day on the Hacker News's Reddit, being a troll, not being a troll, sorry, a lurker. I'm not a troll. But lurking on Reddit, essentially like consuming as much as possible, like videos, podcasts. I used to use TweetDeck religiously, and I had like 1 million channels, and I'm dating myself back to the version that was like all built in, like it was an Adobe Air, like a Flex application. Oh my goodness. But yeah, essentially I follow a number of people on Twitter that I think are thought leaders. Usually the best people to find or to Google for are the developer advocates if you really want to know what's happening within the browser ecosystem. And that's usually what I'm interested in. But yeah, definitely I also wait for amazing Medium posts to come out of places like FreeCodeCamp. And yeah.
Do you have any lists on Twitter of people you could
I've
follow?
got some lists. I also follow some lists. My buddy Wes Boss has a great JavaScript developers list. So if you go on Twitter, I'm not even sure if you can find lists anymore. Can somebody?
Yeah, they're kind of hard to find. but
They're
you
hard
still
to
can.
find. Twitter's almost buried like lists. But I have a couple actually, and you can see yourself get added every now and then. I'm on like a first name list, which is sweet. But yeah, I use Twitter lists a lot for groupings.
Are they public? So if
They are
people
public.
follow
Like
you?
I think I have one that's just called developers, and it's like curated lists. Or like if I just who I follow. I have a very curated list of people I follow, and if we're friends, I just mute you. But you know, no, I'm kidding, Izzy.
Wow. I thought we were friends.
Troll.
That was a Freudian slip earlier.
I think in the beginning of my career is lots of conferences, like listening and taking notes, and then trying to figure out how to categorize things. But since then, I think the last year, I read a lot about patents. But that's kind of the work I do. Is I just have to read what is being created in a like what patents are being created, but that's my work right now. I always have to look at what IP is out there, what's being created, so that's my work, but it's a lot of reading. There's like just a lot of reading, and you're like, where am I gonna find time? I've stopped being a night person, and now I'm a morning person. Trust me, that really hurt badly, like it was really bad, and I've stopped gaming. Aside, you know, like that's, I know, and today at AMD, I was very sad watching everybody else have fun, and I was like, oh, I'll just do something, but I just had to make a choice like 2 years ago to start really like categorizing and organizing the work I do, or I'm just not going to be able to keep up and compete in my industry of, I'm right beside the theoretical researchers, so I'm looking into the future and getting scared continuously, and my world is all about AI right now. Yes, Terminator is taking over. So let's just get that off the table now. So don't worry about it. You'll. It's like, you know, we'll become food for them. So this is getting taped. I always forget that. Reading, going to conferences, talking to people continuously. These are people who've done lots of research for their talks. I'm just teasing. No. You do some, you do. But I think having people on this panel and just hearing what they're doing over a year and the work they're doing is very important, because they've just pretty much like went like this with their work, and you just got the bullet points on their PowerPoints, and you're like, oh, great, I don't have to read all that work they just did because they're doing it for me. So I think that kind of looking at slide shares continuously, what people post, because then you could get an overview. So don't get bogged down into the details, keep it at an overview, kind of see what your industry is going on, and then dive deep into what you want to do. So I think there's overview and then dive deep into the specialty you want to do. So not being a broad person, but being kind of like a T person. Is that what they say? Isn't it a T person? Yeah.
Have a broad set of
Yes,
skills.
but then you're like, you know, this is the person who's going to be working on, you know, to go to, who you need to go to. Sometimes people want to do everything and they pick up every kind of like if I do this, it'll be good, I'll get this job, or if I do this, but then you're not becoming specialized and really honing into your craft. And it also shows your dedication. So I think we've seen that over at least I've seen that through all the meetups we've gone to. A lot of people just want to pick up the next fad, or just want to like just be on top of it and feel like they're falling behind. Trust me, we've all been there, but I think if we read into a certain area, you know, you'll like dive deeper into and be more you. I think it's more confidence after, right? Because then you feel like yourself, then feel like I kind of know a little bit of that, and I kind of know a little bit of that, right? So I think it really grounds you, right? So research broadly, but then go deep into what you're working on. Google Alerts are my favorite, but now it looks horrible in my Gmail. I think I had to start a new email now because just the alerts have taken over. So, but anyways.
Okay, so junior versus intermediate versus senior developers. What do you think are the things that differentiate a junior developer from a more experienced senior developer?
Yikes. I guess I can talk about a bit of a personal thing there. So I still sort of consider myself pretty junior. But talking with my manager, he says, no, stop saying that. Like, you're not junior anymore. Don't do that. It got to the point where I'm no longer heads down working, and I'm no longer focusing on learning, and I'm more focusing on influencing, I suppose. So I'm trying to organize within my team like Skillshare between us to say, hey, like, I'm going to teach some things to my team members, have them teach me some things. I'm going out of my way to find more senior developers and organizing, or if strongly encouraging them to organize workshops for some others of us. And from what I'm hearing from my manager is like those are the sorts of actions that shift you a little bit. That it's not just I'm working, I'm producing. It's now I'm looking a little more broadly at what else is going on and how to improve everything on a whole. But yeah, that's something I'm still thinking about. I'm not quite sure.
I've always hated these buckets, like, and hate's a strong word. I should communicate that better. I disagree with bucketing anybody, or like, I've always disagreed with trying to pigeonhole myself into a category like that. Unfortunately, for your job progression and for the bottom line, when you go into negotiation with somebody, you have to start to consider or take into consider where you are on that spectrum. And that spectrum sort of changes with every company you go to. And in fact, it's even nuanced within our industry. So if we're talking that everybody in this room is going to be in sort of, let's say, web development or is learning skills to build experiences or programming in general, there's a whole spectrum of the type of work that you'll be able to do in your career. You could be at a product company, a services company, you can be at a big enterprise, a small startup, an agency, or you could be freelance. So there's a whole spectrum of experience that everybody is going to get here, which then sort of leads you down a path of, well, am I progressing on the same sort of spectrum that somebody else is? And so how do my skills match with somebody else? And am I an intermediate? I've been freelancing for like 10 years. Where do I fit on that progression? And I've been calling myself just a developer. So it's really hard. I don't like it at all. I think that there's definitely, if you're considering these titles or these roles in, let's say, a large organization, it often comes down to those soft skills about you training people down that spectrum, right? Like helping communicate and give feedback, mentor, and eventually take on sort of leadership or responsibilities, right? So a senior developer or a lead developer often will be more responsible than the intermediate, and that sort of cascades, or that it actually ties in with the responsibilities of what you're shipping at the end of the day. So it's okay, you can be protected a little bit if you call yourself, let's say, a junior developer, because then when the build breaks or somebody deletes the database, it's not your fault, right? So that's key, right? So you want a senior developer above you. It's Darcy's fault that I deleted the database. That happens. and a good senior, let's say, or a good person that is in that leadership role is going to take responsibility and help protect you. And hopefully once you're in that sort of senior position, that you'll also take on those leadership qualities and help protect the people and mentor the people that are on that spectrum. I can tell you sort of salary ranges too, but I mean, that's averages, but I know that there's intermediate developers that, imagine an intermediate developer at Google. They're going to make more than, let's say, a senior developer at a startup here in Toronto, right? I know some averages if you want. I actually posted one time about the average salary around these titles actually in the Tech Masters chat in jobs. So if you want to go back there, there's a historical record that will actually tell you even down to like the average hourly. It's about a year or two old now, but I talked to enough developers that I think I have a good sense of what an intermediate, junior, and senior is making right now. So
You're like a leader. You're like, I remember seeing Darcy a few years ago at FITC going, wow, he's so cool. And saying like he was just like leading. So I'm like, yeah, I don't know what, I would be like a junior right now. Like that's what I would consider. So I won't go into details. I was just saying like your work has been, just take the lead here when it comes to any of those types of questions. I'm always like the students are getting hired by Google and Amazon. So they're just out of there, the pricing and getting getting flown down to Amazon and wined and dined. It's kind of a crazy area. So that's why I keep on building and keep negotiating for pricing, because there's going to be a vacuum, but it's only based on how you can negotiate and program. That's my only. I don't know. I don't know about the titles. Like, I don't know what the titles are because every organization is so different, but it's really based upon your work and then how you're going to lift yourself into that position. Quincy? I don't know.
I'd say the difference is probably an obvious answer, but it's experience. And as you build things, as you work on teams, you're just going to get much better at pattern recognition. You're going to see a problem and you're going to be able to relate that because the mind is a relational tool and it's going to find some parallels in some other problem you've solved, and you're going to be able to solve those problems faster and faster and faster with practice. So I think there's a quote about there's a story, it may be apocryphal, about Picasso, and some lady walks up to Picasso. She sees him just chilling in front of a cafe, being Picasso, and she's like, "Oh, can you draw something for me?" He's like, "Sure," and she hands him a piece of paper, and he just takes his, does a one-line doodle of a poodle or something like that. He was very good at those, and she's like, "Wow, this is great," and Picasso says, $5,000, and the lady is like shocked. She's like, "Wait, what?" She's like, $5,000 for that picture, please. And she's like, "But it only took you a minute." And he said, "Yes, but I've spent my entire life becoming good enough to do that in a minute." And I think that's the same thing with software development. There's not really an upper bound. There's not a speed limit. If you sit down and you're facing exciting new problems every single day, you're figuring out new approaches, you're reading, Gang of Four design pattern books and things like that, and learning about all the different software engineering principles and trying to apply them, you can move really quickly and you can build up that pattern recognition and have just a huge gamut of tools you can call upon to solve problems faster. And I think that in interviews at like the big 4 tech companies in the US, from what I understand, I haven't been interviewed by any of them, but I have lots of friends, and they really focus on speed. Given enough time, anybody can Google around and figure out how to eventually solve a problem, but people who can solve it very quickly, those are generally the people that get snapped up fastest.
And it's not only quick, it's also why did you decide to do what you did? So maybe the answer is not right completely, but it's a lot of the tech part of the interview. There's that book, what is it? Getting ready for, we always use it. It's the, no, it's like it's a cracking the coding interview, yeah. And there's also one for product managers, I think. There's like one for
cracking the PM interview.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so those are 2 excellent books. So our students read, the first one, right? And that is really important. Is not only that interview part, but it's also then they read that like religiously. So that's a book for them to read, but they have to also critically think through what they did so they can answer why they decided to do what they did. And that is not, it's also a test in the sense that how will I even talk to you? Because if you're coming onto my team, I might be the one giving you the test, or 2 other 3 people are in the room. They just want to see how you're just talking to them. You might not be perfect at it, but it's more that they want to see if you'd be a good fit for their team. Right, so I know Shopify did a lot of it. A lot of our students have worked there, just to see how they relax, like how because you're going to fit into a team, and you're going to be either working with them for many an hour, and even sleeping under your desk and stuff. No, go home. But it's how will you work with your team? That's pretty much. It's really important.
Just quickly top up on that. So I've actually interviewed with Amazon, Google, Mozilla. All these folks, gone through the whole gamut right until the end. And then I didn't get hired for some reason, but we won't talk about that. Based on that experience, I actually wrote the front-end developer interview questions with 30,000 star repo. It's a markdown file.
Oh, you wrote that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great resource. We recommend that.
So Google uses it. And you should all use it. It's a great resource, and I was just reminded by Christina, actually. She said she had used it just prepping herself for getting ready for interviews, let's say. And I know we're getting on a tangent here, Izzy. I'll bring this full circle, I promise. Yeah. It's on GitHub, so it's the front-end developer interview questions. If you look it up, I actually gave it to another organization. That's why you probably don't associate it with me. I gave it to the HTML5 boilerplate. So once it hit like 20,000, it was but I wrote that, and then I got some negative feedback about just having this set. Well, one, recruiters wanted to know all the answers because they want to, go to LinkedIn and query all you find developers and ask them one of these questions, and they needed the answer, right? So I was being asked about the answers, or asked to add answers into it, which wasn't appropriate. But also, it sort of lost some context with just having these questions. I personally, when I'm interviewing somebody for any type of position, I am looking for how they think, right? Like, how do you think about the problem? I am looking for, obviously, speed and potentially that domain knowledge existing there, so that only comes usually with experience. But I rarely expect somebody to be a walking dictionary. Google is my best friend every day. But still, how quickly can I Google something and fix the problem? It makes you exponentially more valuable the more that you've seen in what Quincy was saying, that same pattern. How do you solve this problem? Oh, it's this type of problem to solve, right? So, but yeah, use that resource. That's great.
Great. Awesome. Sorry, the guy to pick up the coffee urns is here, so that was ringing while you guys were talking. All right, so why don't we turn it over to the crowd? Do you guys have any questions for some of our panelists here? Can we get someone to go around with a mic? Oh, here, I'll do this. Just for the first one.
Thanks. Thank you, each and every one of you guys, for showing up today. Just a quick question. I mean, with being a developer and being a coder, there's a lot of self-talk. There's a lot of self-teaching. Like you said, Erica, you had used FreeCodeCamp and Code Academy. From a student perspective, what kind of tools, tips, and tricks can you give us as far as breaking down the workload, your study tips when you have to learn a new language, or if you have to learn a new, I forgot the word, but yeah, just learning new things that you need for the job.
Docs. It gets easier because when I look at like the NPM ecosystem, for example, there's I don't know, like 500,000 packages or libraries and tools that I can go dive into and start using. When I look at that, it sounds daunting, right? But there's patterns all throughout it that are the exact same. And if it's half decently documented, the tool, then it's usually very easy to pick up once you have that baseline knowledge. When I'm learning something brand new, it's sort of been incremental. Ever since I started learning HTML, I changed, back in the day, I changed the background color that was right there on the BG color back in the day on like a table element to like red. And I had view sourced and stolen some bands like HTML and like saved it locally. And I was like, man, I'm such a hacker, and changed like a couple of things. But from that incremental step, I slowly learned CSS and HTML, and it was incremental. So like it was like one piece of information at a time. And now that I have that under me, it's way easier to understand. Like once you know one programming language, a lot of the exact same patterns exist all over the place. So it's just nuanced syntax usually, or nuanced API design, right?
I think I never read the docs. Very rarely. I rarely read the docs.
RTFM.
Okay. I read them when I have to Google for a thing, and then I find that thing. I see how to use it. I try using it. That's my process. I'm like, okay, I got the basics on how to use it. Let's try, see if it works. But I've never gone through and been like, let me just read for a very long time about this thing. I've always learned by doing. Like, if I'm trying to learn one little thing, instead of putting it into my big project, I just try it like in the console. I tried in the DevTools console, see if it works. I tried doing it to one little website. Yeah, it works. Okay, now I can use it for real. I think that's really the only way it's stuck for me, at least, is just using it.
So incremental, interactive, like going out and immediately applying things, I totally want to echo those. Those are really important for me when I'm learning new things. And one thing I'll add is just having like a clear project or some bigger vision of what you're trying to accomplish that's driving your learning, so that you're not just kind of out in the weeds, like learning random things, that you're actually learning things and immediately applying them. That'll give you an intrinsic motivation to learn it and use it, and it'll also give you some kind of historical context within which your use of that can reside, so you can call back to it a little easier.
Are there any other questions in the audience? And just can we limit maybe one panelist to answer, just so we get a couple more questions in?
First of all, thanks for the valuable insights. My question is, what do you think about the work-life balance in the life of a developer? Your thought, and what is exactly the situation in your life? Like, can you really apply that thought in your like real life?
Do you think 70 hours a week is do you think, I don't know, is that a normal, no? Okay, then someone else has to answer. I don't believe in work, I don't believe in work, no. Maybe someone else who should answer this. I just realized I'm the wrong person now. I love what I do, so I work too hard. And I just love it. I just enjoy it. I think my family hates me. My husband never sees me. I don't know if I'll ever have a family going this way. Who needs sleep? I could go on and on. How you could get to a point where 2 years ago I pretty much broke down, right? And totally cried, and I think I had a breakdown. And I think if there was a hole in the ground I could jump into, I would. I was putting together, I know, I was putting together this gigantic industrial IoT conference, and I said, I'm just gonna bring everybody into a room, and I'm gonna build things, and I'm gonna show. I think careful. I think that's what you gotta do. You have to be conscious. Time is precious. It's not the money. It's really not about the money. It's really about time. You only have this life. And time is really important, so family is extremely important. Your partners are important, your children, your friends are important, because at the end of the day, when you die, they're gonna ask you what was the most important, that you spent another 10 million hours at work, or was it that you were hanging out with your friends and enjoying who you were as a person? So that goes to the type of work. I love the work I do now. I've decided to say no to a lot of things, so saying no is a good thing. I prefer quality over quantity, and I really am I preach continuously about, if this isn't working out, it's the end. There's no point in doing the work. But I will say, in early part of my career, I just did everything. I was at every freaking meetup. I just needed to make connections. I was, it was 10 years ago, and I said, I'll commit that. But now I could be choosy, but it's because I worked so hard in the beginning. But yeah, dude, don't break yourself down. Don't kill yourself, and choose quality over quantity. And time is precious. So think before you build. I think a lot of the people said in here, think before you even put to code. Think and discuss, and be intelligent. I expect a lot of intelligence from this group to decide how they're going to spend their time and how they're going to interact with people. I don't do coffees with anyone, sorry. I don't do coffees, I don't go out to do that. The reason is I have a lot of work to do, but if I can send a text or have a Slack message or just give you some knowledge, I'll do it. But the reason is I prefer hanging out with my husband than having an extra coffee and 10 million coffees. Or I need to do work, right? And I need to push forward my career and push forward what I do. So every time you get up in the morning, you decide what you're gonna do, right? And how you're gonna move yourself forward. Everything has to be strategic in what you decide to do, right? If it's something that you need to work on, like right now, there was an answer, what should you do? I always do projects. I'm gonna be working on TensorFlow this month, well, December. so my time off kind of thing. To see, I'll do a project, I could put it in a portfolio, I can show people, but that's a strategic like choice that I've decided, and I will be okay if I fail at it and I'm a disaster. I'll just be like, dude, I'm not as bad as some people. Like, you know, like I'm not so bad. I don't care. It's okay. I don't care if I fail. I don't care if I look embarrassed. I don't really care anymore. I'm not going to swear. I don't really I don't care what people think about me anymore. I just do what I love. I have great friends and people who support me. So work life, I don't know about work life, but I know about quality time balance. That's all. So if you can take that on. I know usually they ask women that question. No, like if you love the people around you, you find time. Right? So I don't play LOL anymore. Like I don't play Smash, you know, as much as I want to. Like, you know, there's, damn. So that was a calculated choice on my, and TV. I only watch Game of Thrones and Star Trek, but I do it with my husband. Do you know what I mean? Or with my friends, and we'll do it. I don't play. I realized how much time I spent on D&D. So just so you know, now I don't do that.
I could write a book on this subject alone.
Co-write.
Yeah, I have like a lot. I'm not gonna expand. That was amazing. Work-life balance is probably like the number one thing that I think we should have a conference around work-life balance for programmers. Like it's
Good idea. Who wants to organize a conference?
Ahmed. It's not easy. I can say that I've struggled with it tremendously, and I think I'm on the other end now. I can just say that. I could say a lot more.
Cool. Being mindful of time, I think we're going to have to cut off the rest of the questions there just because it's getting close to 5 now. But thank you very much to all of our panelists. Can I have a big round of applause for everyone? Thank you very much. I don't know how to do this weirdly, but like get off the stage.
I think we were giving. I think there was a couple things going on, giveaways.
Yeah, there's a couple other things.
Okay.
So can I get all the organizers of this conference to come up? Alex, Justin, Min. Is Min over here? Min, you can come down
Min,
here.
Justin, can you come out here? Thank you.
And then maybe Quincy, you can stay like
this is your phone.
very close by. Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Do you want to say a couple of closing remarks about the event?
I don't know what to say. I'm sad it's over, but I'm glad it happened. This is like a Facebook status kind of thing. Thank you so much for coming today. We are very happy that you've decided to spend your Saturday sitting and listening and learning, and hopefully you got inspired or more inspired if you were originally inspired. And that's all from me.
Cool. Min, do you have any?
Once again, thank you very much for coming out today. It's quite amazing that not too long ago we were just, well, it's been 2 years, but we were just meeting up at random coffee shops and struggling to find a place. And now we have all of you guys here with us. This is amazing. And if you have a free Saturday, come and join us at Lighthouse Lab for our weekly meetup. If you would like to start your own FreeCodeCamp chapter, it's as easy as finding a coffee shop that you want to hang out at. So, yeah.
I want to say how excited I am to see so many female faces here today. I'm surprised and I'm very, very happy about it, so I'm glad you guys all came out.
She took exactly what I was going to say. I'm excited to see so many different faces here. I hadn't stood here the whole day in front of all of you. It's awesome. Thank you all for coming. This wouldn't be possible without all of you.
Okay, this is the first time I've ever organized a conference, so I definitely want to do the selfie thing. Wait, you guys. Okay. All right. Where's Quincy? I don't see Quincy. That's just Justin. Okay. All right, can I see everyone in the back, like, raise your hands and, like, be excited? Yeah! Awesome, cool. All right, I've got a couple of thank yous. Actually, Quincy, do you want to say a couple words? Just.
This has been amazing. You all are very adept at putting on conferences. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This is very inspiring, and I think this is a great. This really raises the bar for what coding communities can do in their cities, and it's extremely impressive, and it's been a blast. Thank you.
Awesome. So I just want to give a big thank you to all of our panelists. Min for putting together like a whole ton of things for this conference, including the event and all of the volunteers and putting just basically everything together. Just Min, thank you so much for everything. Alex for just setting up so many of the logistics for the event and organizing the volunteers and making the signs and just absolutely everything. Alex is a dream to work with. Alex for just like also working with our volunteers, also putting together some of our speakers and stuff like that. Justin, wherever he went, for putting together this venue, and Ahmad as well, and Tech Masters. So many thank yous here. Jason Ecto from GitHub, thank you for the GitHub stickers and all the thank you, the gift cards and things like that for our speakers. Matthew Potter over there, mysterious man in blue, who's been in charge of all the AV and doing the best job I've ever seen at any conference. All of our volunteers have just been absolutely amazing, so thank you so much for taking this whole day out. Thank you, TELUS, thank you, Panago, thank you, Tech Masters, thank you, Node School, thank you, Sticker Mule, and thank you, GitHub, and thank all of you guys for coming out today. It was such a pleasure. It was so much fun having this day. So that's pretty much it. I think what we can do is maybe come up, if everyone wants to come up here, we could do a big group photo or something. I think that could be really fun. So yeah, everybody just come up here. Come up to the front. Let's take a big group photo, and then we'll GTFO.